Good morning again. Good morning. Good morning. On behalf of Department of Physiology, I welcome you all. I'm Dr. R.S.K.PANDYA, Associate Professor. Today, for our lecture on History of Medicine, we have Dr. Sunil Pandya as our guest speaker. I welcome sir. We have for this address we have Dr. L.K.PANDYA madam. I welcome madam as well. We have with us Dr. D.N.V.L.Kothari, Professor and Head Department of Physiology. I welcome madam. I request Dr.M.V.L.Kothari sir to introduce our speaker for the day.
Thank you, Hitesh. So, it's indeed a pleasure to introduce Dr. Sunil Pandya sir. Sir is an ex-alumni of St. G.S. Medical College, KM Hospital. Sir has been a professor of neurosurgery here. Sir is currently a neurosurgeon at the Jaslow Hospital and Medical Research Center. Sir has many feathers to his cap, but I would enumerate only a few. Sir has done his undergraduate, postgraduate and super speciality from the Grand Government Medical College, that is the JJ Hospital in Mumbai itself. And Sir has done super speciality training in the Institute of Neurosciences at London. Sir graduated in 1975 and completed his Sir retired with superannuation in 1988 from St. G.S. Medical College. Sir is also on the editorial board of various journals like the National Medical Journal of India and Men's Science Monographs. Sir is also a life member of the Neurological Society of India and the Asiatic Society of India. Since we are having a little bit of a tight schedule, so I would like to tell Sir to please come and deliver his address. Sir has done a lot of work also in medical ethics, so if possible I would request Sir to also touch on that. That of course is a separate topic in itself. And before we started this session, we were talking to Sir, and Sir said that this indeed, history of medicine indeed is a very vast subject. Like you can split it into history of basic sciences, let us say anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, then history of, like pharmacology, pathology, and then history of clinical sciences, which again would be split into history of maybe surgical sciences and medical sciences. So actually it is a vast subject, but we will see how we can cover it. So I invite Sir to please. Good morning. This talk today will be an introductory talk to just introduce to you the subject of the history of medicine. The history of any subject that you want to study is extremely important, because unless we know what has happened in the past and unless we know of people who have struggled in order in the past in order to bring the subject up to the level where it is today, we cannot really proceed further. It is, all sciences are based on the endeavors of the pioneers. It is because of them that we are able to proceed further. Now, as far as the science of medicine is concerned, I am going to try and concentrate on Indian aspects. I will be touching upon Western medicine as well, but I'd like to focus on what has happened and what is happening in India. As you can see, we have a galaxy of individuals who have contributed to the medical sciences in India. And
Please remember that when I show you a few pictures, these are a minuscule number. I can't show you everything that I want to show you because otherwise the entire lecture will be full of just pictures of individuals who have made contributions. I'm giving you some illustrative examples. These are examples which I have chosen. If you, after studying the history of medicine for about 40 or 50 years, if you were asked to choose, you would probably choose different individuals. But that doesn't matter. As long as they are people who have made important contributions, we can learn from their contributions and from their efforts. So here are some examples from the history of medicine in India. On the top, you can see the earlier individuals, Charak, Sushrut, Jiva, 2000 years ago or so. And then we come down to modern times, Dr. Vegas and Dr. Rustam-Jan-Baki. We will touch upon some of these as we go ahead. At the bottom, there are individuals who have contributed at grassroots levels, trying to improve the lot of poor patients, of tribals, and of individuals and families and communities which have not been catered to by the profession of medicine in general. So they have struggled to bring medicine to people who have been deprived of medicine so far. Now, one of the first questions that will probably occur to you is, why do we need to study history? I mean, as it is, we have to study so many things. And in about a month's time, you will be starting with anatomy and physiology. And you will realize that these subjects in themselves are immense and need a lot of study on your part. And then there will be pathology, pharmacology, clinical medicine, clinical surgery, and so much. So when you have to study so much, why do you need to study the history of medicine? And I've listed some of the reasons why the history of medicine is important. First of all, we need to learn about whose shoulders we stand on. It is because of these individuals that medicine has developed to the stage where it is now. And we have inherited medicine from them because of their efforts, because of their struggles. Secondly, the history of medicine provides fascinating stories. There are heroes and there are villains in medicine, just as there are in Bollywood films, and there are triumphs and there are tragedies. There are individuals who, whilst trying to advance medicine, have done so at the cost of their own lives. They have died in the struggle to advance medicine. So there are a lot of inspiration, there's a lot of inspiration to be gained. And lastly, if we do not study history in any field, then we are condemned to repeat mistakes which have been made in the past. And sometimes this is a very, very costly exercise. If we know that these mistakes have been made in the past, if we know that these have not worked or have produced disastrous results, then we can avoid them and we can avoid consequent tragedies. Let's go for a few minutes to medicine in the ancient world. Incidentally, all the slides which I am projecting are going to be, they are already mounted on this computer and they will remain on this computer. So any one of you who wishes to download these slides, please feel free to download them with the permission of the professor and use these slides in whatever way you want. They are here and you can take them and you can use them. Now in India, we have a tradition that medicine was handed to us, to mankind, by God. And these were handed down in the form of what has been traditionally called the Vedas. And as I think all of you know, there are 4 of them. And of these 4, it is the Atharva Veda which contains the principles which pertain to healthcare and to medicine. And the Atharva Veda and some of the Upanishads, they have been the foundations of medical knowledge to the priestly caste. And in ancient times, 6,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, it was the priestly caste, the priests, who also practiced medicine. And this is not just so in India, it was so in ancient Greece and all the ancient cultures in Egypt. It was the priestly caste that also practiced medicine because they were the most learned caste. They were the people who had access to knowledge. The other communities did not have any access to knowledge, whereas these communities, the priestly caste, had access to literature, to knowledge, so that they could practice the... Now this is an illustration, this is an imaginary illustration. Somebody has imagined this, and on our left hand side it shows the Matsya avatar. As you know, the Matsya avatar went deep into the ocean and rescued the Vedas from Hayagriva, and having rescued them, brought it up to the surface of the sea and handed it to mankind. And in the middle, again, is an imaginary illustration of Charak. And Charak is being given the Atharva Veda by this Matsya avatar. And on the right hand side, there are all the rishis and munis who are waiting to learn the science of medicine from Charak. Now this is a picture of a page of the Atharva Veda. The Atharva Veda was written on palm leaf manuscripts. It is a sad story. It is also a tragedy that our love for history is so poor that we have no manuscript of the Atharva Veda in India. If you want to study the original manuscript, and the Atharva Veda came down in a number of versions. There was one version which came from Kashmir. It's called the Paipalada version. And the manuscript of that version is preserved in the library of the University of Tübingen in Germany. So if you want to study the original Atharva Veda palm leaf manuscript, you have to travel all the way to Germany to do so, because we have not bothered to preserve any of our old manuscripts. So the original science of medicine in India was Ayurveda. And the word Ayurveda itself has got an interesting meaning. It is derived from 2 roots. One is the root which means life, and the other is the root which means science, knowledge, wisdom, information. So it is the science of life, and that's an excellent description of what our profession is supposed to study. We are supposed to study the science of life because we are to be promoters of life. Now, the descriptions that have come down to us from Charak, Sushrut and all these eminent teachers of the past has a lot of wisdom in it. Charak has described Ayurveda as boundless. That means it has no limits. You can go on studying medicine to the end of your life and there will still be so much that you have not learned. Secondly, it is eternal. It is true for all ages. The principles of this science don't change with the ages. The principles remain the same. And finally, it is an auspicious science. We are very, very lucky to be in the medical profession because our chief goal is to save life, is to relieve patients of pain, and when the time comes for us to depart, to make death as comfortable and as painless as possible. There is no other profession in the world which has these goals: to retain health and to make life as painless as possible as far as illness is concerned, and to make death easy and comfortable. Ours is the only profession. We are very, very lucky to be in this profession. So it's an auspicious profession. Now, as has been listed over here, in order to be good doctors, we need to understand, learn, and imbibe the principles of medicine, particularly about the causes of disease, about symptoms of early disease so that we can diagnose disease in its early stages, and about the tests that we need to do to confirm our diagnosis, and finally the most effective, the least expensive and least harmful forms of treatment. We need to know all this, otherwise we can't really help our patients. And the true physician, says Charak and Sushruta, from 2000 years ago, the true physician caters to health and illness of the mind, of the body, of the senses, and according to them, even of the soul. So that is the role of the physician, to cater to all these illnesses and to help maintain health. And this was the ancient tradition, the Guru-Shishya tradition. So there would be one Guru and a certain number of students. And these students would be very carefully selected. And the Charak and the Sushruta Samhita lay down criteria who should become a medical student. There were certain qualities which were required to become a medical student. Who should be a good teacher? And there were qualities required of a person who wanted to be a teacher. And there was this close relationship between teacher and students. And very often there was a complex of teachers and a complex of students, and they lived together, they worked together, and they helped each other in a variety of manner. Now these are again illustrations which are supposed to show Charak on our left hand side and Sushrut on our right hand side. These are imaginary illustrations. These are illustrations of what the artist thinks Charak should have looked like and what the artist thinks Sushruta may have looked like when doing an operation. We have no historical portrait of either Charak or of Sushruta. So we have to be a bit careful when we look at these illustrations, and we have to be aware that these are what the artist thought they looked like. Now this is Charak's advice to students. And this advice has stood the test of time. Over 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 years, this advice remains valid. And Charak told the student that if you want to be a successful doctor, always seek the good. The good of whom? Not just of yourself, not just of your family, not just of your community, but the good of all living creatures. And that includes trees, and that includes animals, that includes everything that is alive. So always seek the good of all living creatures. And obviously, you have to be specially concerned about sick individuals who seek your help in getting better. You have to seek the good of your patients. Secondly, your speech should be very carefully considered, think before you talk. And talk in such a manner that you do not hurt anybody. I think this is simple, this is ordinary advice which is common sense. And yet it is necessary for us to continue repeating this advice because we so often we ignore this. We get angry and we say things which hurt others. We say things which hurt even the most beloved of persons, of parents, of children, of spouses. And we hurt them unnecessarily, for no reason at all. Because half an hour later you're going to bitterly regret that you ever said this. And certainly this is true when you talk to your patients and their families. They are extremely vulnerable, they are in pain, they are in anxiety. Are they going to live or are they going to die because of this illness? Is this illness and the treatment of this illness going to bankrupt them? If that happens, then how are they going to survive after they regain health? So there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension in their mind. And so it is all the more important that when we speak to them, we take these also into consideration and we speak to them gently and explain every single aspect of our treatment to them. And then there is a repetition that this is a boundless profession. There is no end to medical science. And finally, who can be the teacher of a good physician? And the answer is the whole world. Everyone is a teacher to you, provided you are willing to learn from them. Your teachers, of course, are your teacher. That's their profession. That's what they are meant for. But your patients are also your teachers. Their families are also your teachers. The people whom you pass on the roadside are also your teachers because you can learn from them. If you observe, you will learn. And so, the whole world is a teacher for the wise. This is advice given to us over 2000 years ago by the ancient and very wise teachers of medicine that India was privileged to have. And this is more or less an illustration of medical meetings and medical conferences of that time. And there would be a very wise and honored individual who would be the chairperson, and then there would be discussions between different groups on different aspects of the subject. So they learned and they taught by discussion. Now, if you study the history of medicine in India, after you come across a few names, Charak, Sushruta, Bhat, Jiva, and so on, then there's a blank. You don't find any other names at all of any eminence comparable to Charak and Sushruta and Bhat and Jiva. So it seems that medicine entered into a kind of a dark age. And those who have studied the history of medicine in India tell us that the spirit of inquiry, trying to learn more about disease, about forms of treatment, about tests, appears to have died or disappeared. And instead of that, it was all practice without thought. So whatever the father was doing, the son would do. Whatever the son was doing, the grandson would do. And the teachings also were based on ancient manuscripts. No new texts were produced, no research was done, no scientific advance resulted. And similar things happen in other branches of Eastern medicine. Medicine in Islam developed around 800 AD. Remember, as far as Charak and Sushruta are concerned, we are talking of BC. This is not AD. Around 800 AD, Islamic medicine started flourishing. And initially they had great masters of medicine. And after some time, like in India, Islamic medicine also faded away. And after these early masters, like Abhichanna, like Abu Qasis, we stopped finding any big names in Islamic medicine. There is a third form of medicine which is practiced in India, and that is called Unani medicine. The word Unani is derived from Greece. It is Greek medicine which was imported into India, particularly when Alexander the Great came to the northwest, and a kind of medicine based on minerals developed, which we now term Unani medicine. And Unani medicine also had a kind of a peak, and after that peak, Unani medicine also dwindled into practice by routine. So just routine. No new advances, nothing new, nothing developmental. So by the 16th and 17th century, we learn that Indian physicians were divorced from the principles of inquiry and experiment, and therefore we remained in a stagnant phase. Now this is not peculiar only to India, it happened in Western medicine as also, and we will see some examples there. So in history, it appears there are peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs. There are times when there are brilliant minds, and those brilliant minds train other brilliant minds, and there is a peak. And then those brilliant minds disappear, mediocre individuals gain power, and then we get a trough. Till the next set of brilliant minds comes up, and then we have the advance. So that is the cycle of history. This is what we had by way of understanding of human anatomy in around 1400, 1500, 1600, 1700. Now I understand that you have still to enter the dissection hall, and therefore you have not studied the inside, the wonderful structure of man. You will probably do so in about a month's time. And when you do that, you will find that this illustration is more like a cartoon than a photograph. It is a very rudimentary understanding of what the structure of man is like. And this is the kind of practice which was seen throughout India. And in some parts of India, the rural areas, the tribal areas, the neglected parts of India, these forms of practice are still to be seen. Very crude, very rudimentary, based on relatively unscientific methods. Meanwhile, what was happening in the West? This is a map of Europe in 1500. And you can see some red rectangles and squares. And these are rectangles and squares where universities were formed in Europe. And many of these universities, for instance, here, I don't know if you can see this, that is the University of Cambridge and the University of Oxford in England. And then there were universities in France, particularly in Paris and Montpellier, and there were universities in other cities in Europe. The oldest university being in Bologna in Italy. So there were these ancient universities which developed. And in these universities, academic medicine took root. Teaching, scientific study, experimentation, asking questions, trying to learn answers. This started developing in the Western universities. And as a consequence, there was the development of very eminent scientists in Europe. And you can see the trace that is there. The most ancient, respected scientist was around 130 to 210 AD, and that was Claudius Delen. and we will speak a little bit about him later. But then, you see there is a huge gap till 1580 when Andreas Vesalius came on the scene. So between Galen and Vesalius, there was a huge gap when there was hardly any eminent thinker in medicine. And then of course we have a whole range of other people. We have Ambroise Paré in France, and he made a memorable statement which is very often quoted. He said, a doctor has no reason to be proud of his successes. And he was most famous for his contributions on the battlefield, on what was done by him to help individuals who had serious wounds on the battlefield. And he made this immortal statement, I don't deserve any credit. I merely dressed the wound. God healed the wound. So this is a very famous statement of his. I merely dressed it. God healed it. That was his modesty, and that was quite typical of great men of all times. And then we have William Harvey on the right hand side, who discovered the circulation of blood. And at the bottom row we have John Hunter, a very eminent surgeon, pathologist, embryologist, researcher and therapist. Louis Pasteur, who discovered the role played by microbes and infection. Lord Lister, who started the principle of antiseptic surgery. Wilhelm Röntgen in Germany, who discovered X-rays, and so on. So you have in the West a whole series of great individuals developing different aspects of medicine. 15 minutes more. We still continue to have that as you go on tracing them further. And if we have time at the end, perhaps we can talk about one or two of them. But today, I'm going to talk of two people. One is the person I referred to, Claudius Galen, AD. Claudius Galen was probably the greatest medical thinker of his time, of that period, around 100 to 180. He did dissections, he wrote textbooks of anatomy, and in his textbooks he provided detailed descriptions of the structure of the human body. And because he was one of the great thinkers of his time, the church in Rome, with the Pope in power, made Claudius Galen the physician of the Christian faith. And his works were prescribed everywhere. So everyone who wanted to study medicine was supposed to study the works of Claudius Galen. Which is okay, it's a nice thing, because after all he was a great scientist, he was a great philosopher. But there was a problem. The problem was that dissection of human beings was not encouraged at that time. With the result that what he had dissected were animals. And the descriptions he provided in his textbooks of what is seen in the human body was based on descriptions of what he saw in animals. And human anatomy differs from anatomy in animals in many respects. And so he made great mistakes. But because the church championed him, anyone who challenged his statements was likely to be killed by the church, executed by the church. And so, from 210 AD to 1500 AD, 1300 years, 1300 years, it's a long period of time. Anatomy was as described in the textbooks of Claudius Galen. The There were people who challenged him, they were punished, and some of them were killed. Till this man came on the scene, D.R.S.K.PANDYA. Dissection of human beings was still forbidden. They were not allowed to dissect human beings. But this man had a thirst for learning. He wanted to know what was in the insides of a human being. So what did he do? At that time, criminals were executed by the state. And the hanging was the commonest method of execution. So the bodies were hung at the entrances to the city. So suppose we have the city of Bombay and there are 6 entrances into the city. On each of these 6 roads, there will be the body of a criminal hanging. Every time somebody is executed, he will be hung there. Why? To serve as a warning to anyone who comes in the city. You misbehave and you will be up there tomorrow. So you better behave yourself while you are here. So what did D.R.S.K.PANDYA do? In the middle of the night, he would go to one of these bodies and take whatever he could. If he could take an arm, he took an arm. If he could take a leg, he took a leg. If he could take a trunk, if he could take the whole body, he took the whole body. In the middle of the night, and there was nobody there. He had to do it in this manner because if he was caught, his body would be there the next day. So it was at the risk of being executed himself that he stole parts of executed criminal corpses lying on the outskirts of the city. Now at that time, there was no preservation of parts for dissection. It was unknown. There was no means available for preserving them. So what did he do? He brought those parts into his own bedroom and he kept them under his bed and dissected in the middle of the night. You can't dissect during daytime. If somebody enters and sees you dissecting, you're finished. Now you can imagine having a part of a body under your bed 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. It stinks to high heavens. And yet this man was willing to do this because he had to learn. He wanted to learn. That urge to learn was so strong. And after doing this for many years, he produced a work of anatomy on the fabric of the human body. And in this work, there were illustrations of anatomy which had never been seen up to that time. And there were descriptions which were true to life, and there were descriptions which challenged the descriptions of Claudius Galen. By this time, the power of the church had declined. Although he was still troubled, he was still harassed, he survived. And slowly, this book of his, on the fabric of the human body, became the world's most popular textbook of its time in anatomy. And it corrected many of the errors that Claudius Galen had made. So, one of the heroes of modern medicine, D.R.S.K.PANDYA. Let's come back now to India after this very brief survey of what happened in Europe. And until about the 1820s, 1830s, nothing really happened as far as Indians were concerned and with respect to modern medicine. When the British decided to set up medical colleges in India, and so the first medical college was set up in Calcutta, the next in Madras, and the third in Bombay. These were the 3 presidency medical colleges: Bengal Presidency, Madras Presidency, Bombay Presidency. And in these presidency colleges, they taught the principles of modern Western medical education. Anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, microbiology, all those things. And we are the products of this British school of medical education in India. And these are some of the individuals who have developed from that system, except Anandibai Joshi. And you probably all know about Anandibai Joshi. She studied medicine in America, so she's a product of American medicine. Unfortunately, soon after she returned to India, she contracted tuberculosis and she died at an early age. She had been asked, why do you want to go to America to study medicine? At that time, remember, the oceans were called Kalapani. You could not cross the oceans without being excommunicated, especially if you are a Brahmin. If you are a Brahmin and you cross, you become a non-Brahmin, which was a terrible thing to the Brahmins of that time. For them it was horrible. But Anandibai Joshi said, no, I need to go ahead and study medicine because the women in India do not like being treated by males, particularly when they are pregnant and most vulnerable. So if I can go and study medicine abroad, I can help my fellow country women. That was the goal with which she went to America. And she suffered a lot because she went abroad and then she came back. Unfortunately, as I said, she died before she could put her dreams into practice. So these are some of the individuals, and I will deal just with a few of them, maybe a couple of them. This is Dr.M.V.L. Dr.M.V.L. was a resident of Goa. His parents came from Goa and they emigrated to Bombay. And he was a member of the first batch of medical students who were enrolled at the Grant Medical College and JJ Hospital, south of Kenya. Not only was he a brilliant student, he won almost all the prizes that were there, scholarships, fellowships. At that time there was fear that when these Indians come out of these Western medical colleges, no Indian will go to them. They will continue to go to the European doctors in the city. But very soon, Bhavdaji and his younger brother, Narayan Daji, who also joined the Grand Medical College a couple of years later, they set up a practice. And their practice was greater than the practice of the best European doctor in Bombay. They were so good. And he did a remarkable amount of work. He did a whole range of operations successfully. But what he is most famous for was that he decided to study and to treat patients with leprosy. Now, leprosy at that time was something you didn't want to even think about. They used to say that if a leprosy patient walks down the road, people would take another road to avoid even confronting that leprosy patient. Leprosy patients were not allowed to take water from drinking wells. If they were very poor, food would be thrown at them. Nobody would hand over a chapati to them. They would throw them from a distance because there was this fear of contagion. And leprosy was the disease that made human beings untouchables. Nobody wanted to be next to them. Many times leprosy patients were kept outside the village, outside the town, or outside the city. Nobody would give them residence inside. Bhavdaji chose to study this disease, and he developed a treatment from a seed of a plant called the Shalmugra plant. And it seemed to work. And he was still working on this plant in relation to leprosy when he died. So a great physician of his time. And his interests were not confined only to medicine. He was a scholar of Sanskrit. He studied Sanskrit inscriptions in different parts of India. He had a colleague by the name of Pandit Bhagwanlal Indrajit. And Pandit Bhagwanlal Indrajit and Bhavdaji published several papers on the history of India, and not medicine, Indian history as learned from Sanskrit inscriptions throughout the country. They were scholars in Sanskrit and they were praised by European scholars of Indian history for their contributions. So Bhavdaji was a multifaceted man and a great individual who would have been honored anywhere in the world. Now let us turn to the poorest of the poor and those who work for these poorest of the poor. These have been with us, these poor people have been with us for thousands of years. For thousands of years we always tended to neglect them. For thousands of years we allowed them to get malnutrition, to get diseases and to die in poverty. But there are some individuals who felt that that was not correct. And they have tried to help these individuals. Here are some examples. I'm sure you know of some of these individuals. They have all worked not in cities like Bombay and Pune and Nasik and Aurangabad, but in places where very few people have even known of the existence of a village or a small town in that area. And so we have, I'm only giving you a few examples, we have many more, but there are too few given the number of deprived and the number of poor individuals that exist in this country. And these people are working for them. One of them, Baba Ante, is dead. I think Rajnikant Arole from Jamkhed is dead. I think Mabel is also dead. But the others are surviving and they are still functioning. And I'm going to talk of just one set of these individuals, father and son. It is the father whose real name was Murlidhar, but all over India he is known today as Baba Ante. He set up a small clinic, very rudimentary clinic, for whom? Like Bhavdaji, for leprosy patients. Nobody cared for leprosy. And so he said, let me see if I can do something to do that. And he started a small leprosy clinic in a rural area. And that has grown into a place which has become a national monument as far as rural healthcare is concerned. He is the person who is the big name, a father figure in rural welfare. And he has made his sons also take to rural welfare. And so this is Prakash Amte on the left at the bottom picture, and Prakash Amte's wife Mandakini, who is also a physician. Both of them are also practicing medicine for poor communities and tribes. So initially Prakash approached his father and said, I will join you in your clinic. And he's saying, there's no need for you to join me in my clinic. I already have assistants over here. I can manage. But there are other parts where there is no doctor. Why don't you go there? And so Baba Ante took him to the place where they are practicing now, near Chhattisgarh. And Baba Ante showed them, look, there is no doctor over here. And there are poor people, there are tribals, they have no medical facilities. And so Prakash and Mandakini settled down there, honored their father's wish, And today, Prakash and Mandakini are themselves honored individuals, and they have come and lectured here in this theatre. Prakash and Mandakini are here. So I have tried to give you a brief, very brief, very cursory outline of the history of medicine. You can go on talking on each of the individuals in each of the photographs for an hour, and that would not be enough, because each of them deserves a lot of consideration. And these are only a handful which I have selected. There are hundreds more who deserve similar consideration, similar study, similar admiration, and similar salutations from us. So there is a lot. But time is short. So I'm going to cut down. And I'm going to recommend to you, if you are interested, a few simple texts on the history of medicine in India. There are lots and lots and lots of, there are more. I've just given you 3. There are at least about 30 to 40 such books. But these are 3 of them. And I would suggest the first one, Kutumbia, is probably one of the finest, and it's available on the internet. You can just download the whole book. You don't have to go and buy it. Don't write down, the slides are here, just take the slides. And I hope you will read these, and I hope over time you will teach others about the history of medicine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful talk on history of medicine. I hope this young mind would be more curious to know more about history as you talk, and will make efforts to look into or read whenever they get time about. I would like to invite Dr. Shenvi Madam to say a few words.
Good morning. I think everyone has liked this lecture, and as sir has said that there are so many things. Suppose our curriculum gives us time, because 2 months have increased, and therefore we can expect and we can keep sir's lecture again on another aspect of history of medicine somewhere after our foundation course is over. Sir is right now chairperson of the humanities in our college. There is a separate section or department of humanities which have different programs throughout the year, and sir is the chairperson of that, first chairperson of GS Medical College humanities department. I just request Dr. Ropa Mehta to just give a token of appreciation of this lecture to Dr. Pandya. Thank you, sir, for coming and giving this lecture at early morning 8:30.